Okay, Tom. Tip number 4, please.
Number 4 is again. These all sound quite samey, but they're all different. But they all come from the same principle. Students, how to have the right equipment. Now, this doesn't sound very glamorous, but few of these things do. You know, very little of what you might call great behaviour is glamorous or exciting or particularly interesting. But some children will come to school every day with, brimming with equipment. Some children fetishise it, and they have, suitcases full of pencil cases, full of Smiggle and Transformers pens and so on, and Harry Potter rubbers. Now that's fine, but you can't rely on them to be the school stash, and also you can't be the school stash either. And there's an interesting culture of dependency that kids sometimes create, whereby we want students to learn, so they need certain equipment in order to do so. And if they don't have it, we're then faced with the eternal teacher's dilemma. What do I do? Right. So kid doesn't have a pen. Kid doesn't have a pen. Classic example. What do we do next? I mean, there's lots of ways you can go with this. To my mind, the least satisfactory is just give them a pen and then say nothing else about it, because they have to have a pen. Now, again, this doesn't sound particularly important or safe, but it can often be the difference between them starting 5 minutes into the lesson versus them starting with everybody else. Or you having another kind of tiresome conversation about why don't you have a pen. Teach them exactly what equipment they need to have. And again, that sounds obvious, teachers do it already, but a lot of teachers don't. And it'll be just something buried in their school planner, that these are the equipment expectations. And you'll frequently see children at the beginning of their school career, either reception year 1 or year 7 in the UK, they'll have the right equipment for about a week, and then they'll notice nobody cares. Nobody's checking up on them. And because human behaviour tends towards entropy, eventually people will start forgetting stuff. And if nothing happens to them at that point, they'll just think, well, I don't have to have stuff because nice Mr. Barton's always going to give me a pen.
Yeah.
So why should I have to bring in stuff? Which means that nice Mr. Barton ends up giving away all his pens. And eventually he gets to the disastrous stage where he's giving away his good pen. You've all got a good pen. And that's your pen, and it's like a £4 pen or something like that. Or a what's that, a blue or a Fontainebleau, what they're called. Anyway, you don't want to get there. So say to the kids exactly at the beginning of the school year, this is the equipment you need to have. And it might be, sewing trunks, or it might be a pair of compasses or something like that. But you teach them exactly what it is, and you check that they've got it. It's at least for the first few weeks. Like uniform check, equipment check, everyone. Let's see what you got. Brilliant, well done. Where's your calculator watch, Craig? And are children still expected to have calculator watches? I still have a calculator watch. The bouncy buttons. Anyway. So you teach them exactly what to have, and that's the beginning of it. And then you check them up in it, and that's the continuation of it. But thirdly, there's something which I remember learning from, of all places, TCI Fridays, right? Which, as regular viewers of my output will know, somewhere I spent a good few years after university because I studied philosophy. And one of the things they had, one of the mantras they had there was actually really, really good. As a waiter, you were expected to have lots of pens. So they used to say minimum 3 pens. Bring a pen. It was minimum 3 pens, and the mantra was 1 to use, 1 to lose, and 1 to lend.
Nice,
right? It's so cheesy. You could toast it, but it's good. It's good because one for you, one for somebody else in case they need it, and then one in case your pen breaks. I just think it's so clever and smart. You've got to have it, and if you've got that kind of behavioural habit taught to students, then they'll all be able to share that amongst one another, unless there's a student that everyone particularly dislikes. And then you have a backup plan. The backup plan is when somebody wants a pen, you say, sure, fine, we'll keep the lesson going. But teach them that they must ask immediately. They must ask, and if they don't, they'll be held accountable for their actions again, right? So there's a consequence for that. And then say, right, fine, I will help you. There's your purple pen. Make sure it's like a purple pen, so that if they do it 3 times in a row, for example, you can then make something of it. I wouldn't, for instance, penalise somebody for once forgetting a pen, but I would if they did it 3 times in a week or 3 times in a month or something. And so you have to track it. So you sweat the small stuff, which means not necessarily leaping on them instantly, but noticing really, really attentively. And then when it comes to parents' evening, you can say, look, purple pen, and you can make a conversational point about it. So there's that. Or you have a stock of pens yourself, but then you make sure it's handed back in, or they give you a 5p deposit or something like that. Or you teach children what to do, for instance, go to the school stationery shop or something that. The point is this: the exact strategy doesn't matter. The point is they are taught not just the expectation, but how to cope with not having it. They're taught how to deal with disastrous circumstances.
It's really nice, this, Tom, and as you say, it feeds back into the things you've spoken about already. You could imagine this, well, you'd hope this would be part of the school policy about what to do with equipment. So again, even if you don't necessarily agree with it as an individual teacher, following that policy feels like it's important. I really like the idea of the purple pad. I've not thought of doing that. So you're in... Because the problem is, I've got into big rows with kids, so they don't have a pen. I'm like, why haven't you got a pen? And the lesson's ticking away, it's bubbling up. But I like the idea of, okay, here's a pen, but it's going to be very obvious when you do your writing in your book that I have lent you that pen because it's going to stand out and so on. I like that, so I've got the I can follow that up later on without having to deal with it there in the moment. That feels really important as well. I like that. But it's fascinating, isn't it? It's a controversial one, this. I mean, we're both on Twitter and we see it all kicking off all the time on Twitter. This equipment
It always
thing,
kicks off on Twitter.
It always
it kicks off over rubbish. Who cares?
Like, equipment is always one, right? And again, you can get the extremes where you're in a detention for forgetting your pen, and you get the other extreme where it's just a teacher just dishing out equipment left, right, and centre. And it's very easy to get kind of hung up on this. But I guess without putting words into your mouth, following the school policy feels important. Trying not to disrupt lesson time in the moment, but also having that kind of follow up, so the kids kind of know what the rules are and what aren't. Well, would that be fair?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't think of a job in the world where if you didn't show up with what you needed to bring, they'd let you get away with it. I mean, there's a kind of a real world, real life ramification or consequence of this, which is you've got to teach children to be responsible for their own stuff. Now, I've taught teachers, from Burkina Faso. I've taught teachers from Eastern Europe, in cultures where schools have got very, very little, and you're expected to provide everything that you need for the school. And obviously, I'm not wishing that as a state, but I'm just saying that in situations where you need it and it's important, people tend to value these things and they tend to remember it. And you tend to use your pencil down to the stub because it matters, because you can't just chuck a pencil away and say, haha, I don't have another pencil. That's your pencil for the month. And in situations where we value these things, we treat them as if they are important and we change our behaviour accordingly.
Fantastic.